By all accounts, Herculine Barbin was a relatively normal young lady, but one fateful visit to the doctor would change her life for the worse. After being examined for a pain in her lower abdomen, it was soon revealed that she was in actual fact a man. In reality, she was an intersex or a hermaphrodite, but her case caused a shocking media sensation across France and ended in tragedy. Join me as we explore her life. The intersex person who would be variously known as Herculine Barbin and Abel Barbin during her short lifetime was born on the 8th of November 1838 in the commune of Saint-Jean-d'Angely in southwestern France. Her baptismal name was Herculine Adelaide Barbin, but her family referred to her simply as Alexina, and she was raised as a girl. Barbin's family was very poor. At a time when widespread poverty was enveloping much of French society, the unwanted byproduct of rapid industrialization. Despite the family circumstances, Barbin was a gifted student, and she managed to acquire a scholarship to an Ursuline convent where she furthered her studies into her late teenage years. Already at this juncture, she was deeply confused about her sexuality, as her memoirs would later reveal. Yet her status as intersex would not become clear until her early adult years. In the mid-1850s, Barbin began studying to become a teacher. While her studies and training went well, and she was soon qualified to become a teacher, her personal life was in growing turmoil. Sexually, she was clearly more attracted to women, but troublingly, she had not begun to develop sexually herself. She had not begun to menstruate in her teenage years, and physically, she had remained flat-chested and somewhat boyish in her appearance. Furthermore, Barbin also had hair developing in an unusual way on her upper lip, cheek, and other places one would usually associate with male puberty. Barbin was aware that she looked different from other young women her age, and knew that she had thicker, darker hair on her arms and legs. People would jokingly comment on her appearance, and so she began to trim her hair, wear long clothes, and made sure never to swim in public. Before further exploring Barbin's story, let's just briefly examine the science of hermaphroditism. Hermaphroditism is where someone develops both male and female sexual gametes and organs. This happens in a wide range of mammals and other organisms, and it is not exclusive to humans. Roughly 5% of all species experience hermaphroditism. In humans, this can often manifest in a person having elements of both female and male sexual organs. Hermaphroditism is more common in humans than is generally appreciated. Approximately 1.7% of the population, or 1 in 60 people, have hermaphroditism of some kind, while 0.5%, or 1 in every 200 people, have the discernible appearance of both male and female sexual organs, although some of these stats are disputed by biologists on the basis of chromosomal arrangement, and some place the figure of significantly discernible hermaphroditism to as low as 1 in 500 people. Furthermore, hermaphroditism is far more common in some parts of the world than in others. Historically, people had very little understanding of what caused hermaphroditism on a scientific level, though some ancient and medieval societies were somewhat sympathetic to it. This was decidedly not the case in early modern times between the 16th and 18th centuries. During this period, when people were discovered to demonstrate elements of hermaphroditism, they were typically reported on as being, quote, monstrous. This is extremely insensitive by modern standards, yet it's important to note, as it highlights the difficult circumstances faced by anyone with hermaphroditism, even in the 19th century. The only difference in Barbin's time was that she was living through an age of wide-ranging medical study when doctors were anxious to discover why people presented symptoms or features which they did not have a scientific explanation for. This meant that Barbin's condition would become a source of brutal social attacks, yet also a simultaneous medical inquisition. It would be a very tough situation for her to deal with. Herculine Barbin's story would come to public attention as a result of developments in the late 1850s and early 1860s. Having acquired a position in a girls' school after completing her training in 1857, she began to develop sexual feelings towards another teacher there by the name of Sara. Although they were just colleagues initially, Barbin and Sara quickly became friends, and Barbin would occasionally help Sara dress by lacing her up, getting even closer to her. It wasn't long until their intimacy grew, and the relationship became sexual. As their love blossomed, the pair soon began to give off small signs in public, such as gentle looks, calling each other nicknames, and discreet kisses on the cheek. Before long, rumours of this clandestine relationship were circulating amongst the staff and students. It was reported that even Sara's mother learnt of the rumour. To protect her family from the gossip, she prohibited Sara to continue seeing Barbin. She agreed and promised to do as her mother wished, but in reality, the pair carried on with a love affair. They were much more discreet about their relationship moving forward, though it would come to an end regardless. During this time, Barbin began to suffer from deteriorating health. Her general health had never been good, and she had suffered from periodic bouts of illness throughout her life, some of which had been unexplained. In the late 1850s, the issue was periods of major physical pain in her midriff and other regions. In an age before sophisticated medical oversight for young women, Barbin could not obtain relief for her problems. So, being a zealous Catholic, she instead consulted the Bishop of La Rochelle. Bishop Landriot then asked Barbin if he could consult with a local doctor, Dr. Chesnay, on her behalf. She agreed, and Chesnay soon requested that Herculine attend a medical examination. Dr. Chesnay was immensely surprised by what he discovered on examination. Barbin presented with male and female sexual organs, with a small vagina, a small underdeveloped penis, and tests, which were internal and had not descended in any fashion. Detailed medical documents were written up, and other doctors assisted with in-depth tests with the express intent of determining her sex. It must have been quite upsetting for Herculine Barbin. Ultimately, the medical professionals concluded that Herculine Barbin was in actual fact a man. Today, the condition would be quickly identified as pseudo-hermaphroditism, but in the middle of the 19th century, there was no full scientific understanding of what caused this. Barbin's story soon emerged in Western France and then nationally. She became the talk of town, and it caused something of a media sensation, with newspapers writing about the girl who was quite simply a young man. Much of this was extremely cruel. It was said that Barbin used her quote situation to get close to young women and have discreet love affairs. The word monstrous and freak also arose frequently. A medical inquisition of sorts followed, one in which Barbin was attacked for having worked in an all-girls school despite displaying male sexual organs. A legal case followed in which the courts effectively reassigned her gender as male. The psychological impact of all of this was immense and hugely negative. In the early 1860s, as the case was resolved, Barbin was forced to quit her job as a teacher. Her relationship with Sara broke up, and she then relocated to Paris. There she began to adopt a male identity, going by the name Abel thereafter, as a masculine version of Adelaide. In Paris, she struggled to find work and lived an increasingly impoverished and isolated life. In the mid-1860s, she wrote the following in her memoir or diary: "I have suffered much, and I have suffered alone, forsaken by everyone. My place was not marked out in this world that shunned me, that had cursed me. Not a living creature was to share in this immense sorrow that seized me when I left my childhood, at that age when everything is beautiful, because everything is young and bright with the future. In February 1868, the concierge or building manager of the apartment block that Barbin was living in on the Rue de l'École des Médecins, very near the Sorbonne University in the Latin Quarter of Paris, found her dead in her apartment. Tragically, she had taken her own life. She did this by lighting her coal-gas-fired stove and then inhaling the fumes. Investigators afterwards were wholly confident this was not an accident, and that Barbin had died by her own hand due to how her body was positioned next to the stove, and also the discovery of what was effectively a suicide note addressed to her mother. Her motives have been widely speculated on. Many people have concluded that it was a combination of her traumatic experiences over the past decade combined with her poverty and other circumstances. Because she is assumed to have been dead for several days when she was found, and since it was not possible to accurately identify how long a person had been dead for in the 1860s when a body was discovered like this, the exact day on which she died in February 1868 is unclear. When her body was discovered in her apartment in February 1868, there were very few possessions around her. The tiny apartment had just 4 pieces of furniture: a bed, a table, a chair, and a small bedside locker or desk, a clear sign of the poverty of Barbin's final years. On the little desk was a memoir, which Barbin had written as a therapeutic effort to understand her situation and what had happened to her following the social reaction to her hermaphroditism. Quotes here reveal her troubled thoughts on her existence, her sexual and physical development, and the lack of knowledge as to why she was developing the way she was. Take the following passage. At that age when a woman's graces unfold, I had neither that free and easy bearing, nor the well-rounded limbs that reveal youth in full bloom. My complexion, with its sickly pallor, denoted a condition of chronic ill health. My features had a certain hardness that one could not help noticing. My upper lip and parts of my cheeks were covered by a light down that increased as the days passed. Understandably, this peculiarity often drew me to joking remarks that I tried to avoid by making frequent use of scissors in place of a razor. As was bound to happen, I only succeeded in making it even thicker and more noticeable still. My body was literally covered with it, and so unlike my companions. As for my figure, it remained ridiculously thin. That all struck the eye, as I realized every day. It makes for difficult reading in places when we consider that she ultimately took her own life. Yet the text would go on to have a major impact. Inspired by it, Jeffrey Eugenides, an American author, wrote the novel Middlesex about an intersex protagonist named Stephanides. It was published in 2002 and won a Pulitzer Prize. The 1985 French film The Mystery of Alexina was also based on her memoirs. Hence, as difficult as her life was, Herculine's memoir has left a lasting legacy. Barbin's story returned to wider public knowledge in the 1980s. At that time, the eminent French philosopher and social theorist Michel Foucault became interested in her story as an example of how gender was being constructed during the 19th century. This was part of his research into what eventually became his work, The History of Sexuality, published in different volumes between 1976 and a posthumous 4th volume in 2018. This led him to publish Barbin's memoir with his own commentary alongside, which appeared in the English translation in 1980 as Herculine Barbin, being the recently discovered memoirs of a 19th century French hermaphrodite. Despite Foucault's efforts to suggest it was discovered, excerpts from her memoir have been published as early as 1872. Foucault's argument throughout was that Barbin was an example of a growing tendency in Western society and science to restrict people who were born with hermaphroditism to picking one gender or the other, or indeed having the decision made for them by the medical community. As such, what Foucault detected in Barbin's life story was a growing tendency towards gender rigidity. However, he contrasted this with ancient and medieval times when gender fluidity had been much more acceptable in cultures like ancient Greece or within some sections of Arab culture during the Middle Ages. Foucault cannot have known it at the time, but he was writing just as views on gender were beginning to change and to move towards a more fluid society, which pertains today. Barbin's birthday, the 8th of November, is celebrated every year today as Intersex Day of Remembrance. Thank you so much everyone for watching this video on Herculine Barbin. I hope you found it interesting. Let me know what you thought of her life down below in the comments, and if you have any other suggestions, also be sure to leave them down below in the comments. I hope you guys are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you get all my videos as soon as I upload them. Anyway, that's all from me, so I'll see all of you in the next Forgotten Life. Thanks.